Okay, so I wanted to do a video. I was noticing that on my YouTube, this is Andre. Uh, I also go as Master AD, also Cards of Miracles. I've been using that as kind of my whole kind of persona, kind of, uh, I don't know, ensemble of rhetoric. I don't know how you would call it, however they would call it in a professional studio. But I wanted to appeal to more females because it seems that there's females that watch some of the content, but they don't watch all of the content. And so I'm not really sure how to reach out to women in a way that says they're going to listen to my content, but I'm going to give it a shot. So the one thing that I'm going to do is I'm putting a shot of Notre Dame, the cathedral, which is over in France, because I have been to France. And France is one of those places that, for most women, if they've never been to France, they've probably heard of France. And then if they've heard of Paris, because that's where the cathedral is, the Cathedral of Notre Dame is in Paris, France, right next to the Seine River. And so I had the opportunity to go there in back in the 2000s, early 2000s, before September 11th had happened, and it was a great time to be in Europe. So I'm gonna leave that picture there and just try to do some talking. I'm not really sure what's going on with the women of today compared to like how it was when I was growing up, and and what it was like, you know, back when I was kind of traveling and doing my thing. Like nowadays, women, it's way different, to the point where most women, I'm not sure what they're looking for. I know I've heard of the manosphere. I've heard of different things being red pilled, uh, different things of uh, to the effect that women are looking for more from men than has been expected in the past. Like in the past, like there were things that were expected of men, but everyday working man was just kind of an everyday working man. They didn't have to worry about whether they were cultured or whether they came from another country or if they spoke 4 or 5 languages or if they had a passport that had been stamped with 1,000 different stamps on it. And so women of the, if you want to do it by generation, you have the boomers. This is how I typically would say the standard is. You have the boomer generation, or you have the veterans. The veterans are about in their 80s. That's the generation that like served in World War One and World War Two. After World War Two, you have the boomer generation. The boomer generation is like the grandparents of what today is. Then after the boomer generation, you have the X, Y, Z generation. However, it looks like from the way that I see things, because I was considered an X generation back when I was younger at the time, when I was growing up back in the 90s. However, it seems at this point there's this extended boomer generation where now if you're hitting your 50s at this point in 2025, like you're considered like an extended boomer, where after that XYZ generation you then have the millennials. And so these generations are all getting kind of like, you know, to the point where they don't understand one another. And the women, the female in particular, it doesn't matter what age they are, it doesn't matter if they're 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, that college age. or if they're in their early 20s or mid 20s, late 20s, early 30s, right? They're all kind of classified the same. And so if you're thinking about it, if you're a millennial and you were born in, say, 2000, you'd be 25 years old, give or take. And at 25 years old, that means you're at that age where you're kind of wondering, like, are you going to settle down or are you not going to settle down? Are you looking to find a man or are you not looking to find a man? Now, by most standards, from what I've seen in the culture, most women at that age have kind of settled on not being ready to, settle down with a man. So on content, when it comes to like listening to content or trying to understand what men want or what men are looking for, women themselves are finding it difficult to find a place where they can find out which generation is the generation that gives them the best opportunity of being able to meet their expectations of how they want to move forward with their lives. Now, it's a little different for the men out there that are trying to figure themselves out, because the men, for the most part, they usually want to say it's the economy that creates a situation for the men, because the men essentially are the ones that have to think whether or not they're going to be able to support a family or how they're going to be able to support a family. So if at 25 years old, if you were born in 2000 and you're going to be 25 years old in 2025, considering everything that's taken place as a man, starting from 2001, you would have had 9/11 happen, then you would have had the recession of 2008, and that would have taken you through the Obama administration, and that would have led you into 2020, essentially. And when 2020 hit, that impacted every generation. And so every generation is like impacted by these things that in the end, you can't really understand like just how much like was lost when these things happened. There's a picture of the Eiffel Tower. So what I'm going to do is I'll take this and put this to the side. This is a picture of the Eiffel Tower that I took. So it's another shot of Paris. It was really nice. Paris in 2000 was really nice. At the time I was traveling with a college girlfriend that I was with. She had been going to school, study abroad over in England, and I was fortunate enough to go and travel backpacking with her for about a month. We went around Europe, traveling throughout Europe, going to the different countries, and traveling and seeing all of Europe that we could on foot, backpacking. But back to what we're talking about. So, for women, if it's women that want content to listen to, and men are having to bring the information for them to say, well, I'm not like a typical woman. I have my own, needs, my own wants, my own desires, my own passions. I've lived my life, and you're not really looking for the same stuff that a man is looking for. A man wants to have a job and he wants to be able to settle down, but he's not necessarily looking to do it the same way that it was done back in the 1950s, let's say. Well, like back in the 1950s, there was a greater sense of community. There's a better sense of like when you came from a community, like you came from a community. Like when you were from a town, like you were from a town. and you grew up in that town or in that county, and everybody knew one another. And it was one of those things where it was like people back then just understood things differently than what they do today. Today, everything is social media. So with the connection of social media going back to, I don't know, I'd say the early 2000s is when social media got kicked off with Facebook. And Facebook was one of those things that just, I don't want to say it changed everything, but certainly it didn't make it easier to do the things that people were really looking to do with their lives. It meant that things were cheaper to achieve, but not that everything was now going to be simplified and that everybody was going to be able to enjoy their lives as if, like, you know, there was going to be no problems in the world. So these generations, they're all kind of like, they're all disjointed and they're not really connected to one another the way that it used to be when you grew up, where you had like, you knew who the adults were and you knew who like the middle-aged people were, and then you knew who the college kids were, and then you knew who the teenagers were, and then you knew who the, you know, the kids were, and so on, all the way down to the littlest, you know, the infants. Nowadays, it's like you have kids that are like, you know, a 12-year-old can act like a 17-year-old. A 17-year-old can act like a 20-something-year-old. A 27-year-old can act like a 30-something-year-old. And this was all because, you know, people up top started to mess around with how they were seeing the generations. Like most of the generations were, you know, never the way that they are now with the way that they see things. Here's some change to look at. Hope and change, hope and change. Here's a Sacagawea, in case you want to see change up close. So the things got really like crazy, and that's just how it was. Things got crazy with how things looked and how things were seen. There's the Eiffel Tower with some change. So when it came to like, you know, women's content, I don't read a lot of women's content. Meaning, as a man, I don't go reading like what women write in Teen Magazine or 17 or in Vogue or in you know, the magazines that women would read, Oprah or, you know, whatever other female publications there are out there. And I don't read very liberal publications either. So I'm not reading like Rolling Stones or, you know, music magazines or cultural magazines to understand like how I want to live my life. For me as a man, I grew up at a time when it was just understood that things worked better a certain way if you followed, you know, a natural course, the way that, you know, water flows. Water flows from top to bottom. So, you know, if you want to find a river, you can go low or you can go high to find out where the river is coming from, to find out where the river goes, where the water's going to collect. Now, most women, I don't know if they're looking to try to find men to find where they're collecting, because chances are there's only pockets of water here and there and there and there and there, and it's not like flowing rivers where men are able to just be seen everywhere at this point, because all I ever hear about when it comes to the men is that the men don't want to talk with the women, or they're not approaching the women the way that the women would typically want for the men to approach the women. So, and this is a big problem. This is a big problem, that men are not able to go and approach women the way that women would like. This is not something that was done with any intent or purpose of saying, when it comes to culture, you don't want to play with culture. When it comes to change, you don't want to play with change. You want to make sure that if something has a certain value, that you know how much it's worth, to say this is going to be this much, and this year here, this is going to be that much, and this year here, and this was the same year, because these 2 years it's the same year. So in 2000, to say how much is that worth in 2000, that Sacagawea, because this is worth $1 in U.S. currency, this Sacagawea, right? So if that's worth $1, how much was that dollar worth back then in 2000? Back in Paris, back in France? What did that get on the exchange? And you would find that it would be worth something different than it is today. It wouldn't be worth the same. Essentially, women are looking for things like, they want like something, a big diamond. That's what they want, right? They want like a huge, diamond that they're like, hey, that's what I need. I need a nice big diamond, because that's how much I'm worth. That's what I want to be. I want to be diamond status. I want to be diamond class. And as much as that's nice, not everybody is worth, diamonds that are 80 carats or 100 carats, or however big the carat is that you think you're supposed to be worth when it comes to meeting a man. That's just how it is in the reality of things. And so how to talk with women of different ages, and then try to figure out like what's the best way to help out every demographic of young person, whether they be in college, whether they be out of college, whether they be middle-aged, whether they be, adults. Because at this point, for me to meet somebody is, it's nice to believe that I can go and find somebody that's going to be worth something that's worth a lot of money, that's going to be worth a nice diamond, right? And this is a paperweight is what this is. So this is it's like a diamond paperweight. So you can kind of put your stuff down and make sure it doesn't go anywhere. But that's the whole thing. It's how do you find the weight? How do you find the majesty to something, to say that something is worth it? This is a shot of Venice. These are gondolas in Venice. So, oh sole mio. That's what they used to say in the gondolas. Or they used to say that in the movies. The guys used to joke about it. So if you've never traveled, if you've never been anywhere, and then on top of that, you've never been in a relationship or a real relationship, it makes it difficult. It makes it difficult for women to understand, like, what is it that they're supposed to be doing with their lives, or how are they supposed to be meeting men? How are they supposed to connect with men? And if they're living independent lives where they're saying, well, I don't really need a man, or I don't really want a man, you know, I can go travel by myself and go see places by myself, you know, without having to worry or be in fear that, you know, that every place is touristy. Because not every place is touristy. Those places, when I was traveling, I went off the beaten path. So I would travel, and I would go off to areas that where it's like, you know, it's not American tourist action. It was like everyday people just living everyday lives. But that was back in 2000. So nowadays, to go and travel and say that you're going to go travel, but you're going to travel by yourself, you're going to travel with a group, you're going to travel with, who are you going to travel with? And some people, they do traveling fine on their own. If you like traveling by yourself and that's how you like to do things, I mean, that's cool. Me personally, I've never traveled by myself, so I've never had to worry about, you know, going and saying, well, I just wanted to go to Japan and just travel through Japan on my own. I mean, everything is money, so unless you have the money to buy the flight to get yourself to Japan and then, to get yourself to Japan and then have a travel itinerary, and if you've never been to the country in the first place, any country, that's very difficult. That's a very difficult thing to imagine, that you can just travel to a country and just think that you're going to travel in that country without any problems, especially if you don't speak the language. I mean, if you don't speak a speck of Japanese and you want to go see Japan, I mean, I guess you can go check out Japan, but, you know, again, what's going to be the benefit? And that's with any country. I mean, you could go, like, if you're, like, let's say you're English and you want to go to England, I guess that's cool. You could go to England because, I mean, English, you should be able to speak with the British. You might not be able to understand everything they say. It's like going to Ireland. If you're Irish, if you have an Irish background and you want to go to Ireland and you can, you know, make it in Ireland, you're probably not going to understand everything they say, but you'll be able to go to Ireland and talk with people that are Irish. That's just how it is. So this is another picture. This is of Nice. That's the French Riviera. That's how it looks like. Nice was really nice. I enjoyed Nice. I thought it was very pretty. Very built up too. That's where the Cannes the famous Cannes Film Festival is held. So, and women love to travel. They love to go to those exotic places. They do. And I'm totally into that, except that right now in my life, I don't have that time and I don't have that money to go to those places. Plus, I've traveled to some of these places already when I was younger, and I'm from New York originally. So for me, some of these things aren't really on my bucket list to have to say, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that. So for a lot of these women, they got these bucket lists. I would probably say start with your bucket list. That's what they used to talk about back in the day. But if you don't have a bucket list, or you could, I'm just saying, call it a bucket list, but don't make it a bucket list like the way that they used to make it a bucket list. Because people used to make it a bucket list, and they made it like a literal bucket list, where they would have like a bucket, and they would throw everything that they wanted to do in the bucket. They would throw like a list of everything that they wanted to do. And to me, that was just kind of ridiculous. You know, like they would be like, I want to go to this country, I want to go to that country, I want to go to this event, I want to go to that event, I want to do this. And then all of those events, all of those places that they want to go to, it's like over a lifetime of bucket list. So I think like with most women, I would say take it year by year. You know, try to figure out what is it that you want to do this year first before you start worrying about what you want to do for the next 10, 20 years. Because again, with most guys, I'm not at a point where I'm saying I want to settle down and have children. Although I am at that age. You know, I'm at that age where that should have already happened for me. However, that's not what I was looking for, you know, as I got older. It wasn't something that I prioritized and said, you know, that has to happen or this has to happen at a certain time. For me, I was more like, no, if it happens, when it happens, then good. If it doesn't, I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not gonna dwell on the fact that it's supposed to happen at a certain point or at a certain time, which is what a lot of women have done. They've made it a point where they say they reach a certain age, whether that's 30, 31, 32, whether it's 26 or 27, or when they say that ideal ages because they have their eggs that they're thinking about, or they're thinking about pregnancy, and they're thinking about labor, and they're thinking about, you know, their parents and, you know, their grandparents and things like that, and who's getting married, which friends are getting married. And that's a lot to think about. All that stuff is a lot to think about. I would say in this day and age, the best thing to do is just to prioritize each year. Just take it year by year. Don't try to go past 2025. We're in the year 2025 right now. I would say take it year 2025. What do you want to get done by the end of 2025? Because they're saying that there's some things that are expected to happen this year coming up, just on the global scale. So if you can't get yourself to understand things on a global scale, you know, again, to say that you want to have all these bucket list events that you want to take care of over the next 5 to 10 years, that's a lot of work. And then to say that you want to try to fit a relationship in there, or try to put a relationship in between some of those years, to then say you can't find a good man, or a good man's not available, I don't know. That's tough. That's tough for me to believe. You know, again, if you're trying to go see the world, to go see what's out there, to go experience, you know, how things are in different places, you know, you better invest in a camera, or a camera phone or something, to go see how things are. Because the things out there are very different. They're very different. This is in Notre Dame. This is inside the stained glass in Notre Dame. This was before the fire, because I believe in 2016 Notre Dame had caught on fire. The roof had something had happened to the building, to the structure. And so this is, I think these are all candles. This looks like all candles here, lighting up the interior. And this is the stained glass on the back. If you look at Notre Dame on that original picture that I put up. So if you see there, that stained glass here in the front. And then stained glass, I think that might be on the back, because there's another side to Notre Dame. But yeah, for the women, I don't know. The women, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough, and I think that for every woman, it's gonna be different. It's gonna be different for each and every one. It's not gonna be the same for everybody. It's gonna be different for everybody. And you gotta do what you gotta do on certain levels to commit to certain things. Otherwise, you can't expect like the world to be as leveled as it was back in the 50s, where things were everything was understood a certain way, where the man would go off to work, he would work his day job, his 9 to 5. He would then come back home and the wife would be home. The wife would be, raising the children as a stay-at-home wife. And he would come back and then he would take care of the house. He would, take care of all the work around the house. He'd cut the lawn, trim the hedges, take care of the trees, fix whatever needed fixing around the house, the cars, take care of electrical work and do all that good stuff. We are well beyond that point of saying those days are long since gone. They are long gone. They're not coming back either. Although sometimes I think down south these people are trying to relive it, or they're trying to start it back up with these HOAs, because it seems like that's all they have, HOAs to rely on. Is they're thinking that HOAs is gonna, it's gonna be the saving grace. To say that that's all you need is to live in an HOA community and get married and move into an HOA community, and everything else is gonna just work out all on its own. And I've never been an HOA person, so although I live in an HOA right now, but I can say it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and with an HOA doesn't come a community. It's not, you don't get like a community the way you got communities like back in the day. Back in the day, a community was like, you would have communities where you had brothers and sisters that lived in a household, that it was like an actual household. And that was your house, and you ran your house the way you wanted to run your house. So you could have, 5 kids. You could have 3 sons and 2 daughters, or, two sons and 3 daughters, and you could run that household, and everybody was in line. Everybody paid attention, and everybody understood, who was the person that was calling the shots, who was the people that were in charge to say, hey, we need to get this all done, we need to get this all taken care of. And that was with 2 parents that, got married and stayed married. And now it's like, it's difficult enough to get 2 people to get married, for them to even stay together, more than 7 years before they start thinking about divorce and start thinking about other things. So, I don't know. I think it's difficult. It's a difficult task, difficult to have to wonder about. If you're looking for certain things for men to want to show you or teach you, or if there's things that you're saying, hey, I want certain things for men to be able to understand. I want them to be cultured, and I want them to speak second or third language. I want them to be able to get along with all people. I want them to have a good paying job, a secure job. I want them to be able to, show that they're going to be able to grow and develop as a person in a relationship over, years and years. I mean, that's a tall task. That's a tall task. So, again, it's hard to talk about women's issues or to talk, about what do women need to hear, or what do men need to hear, or what's the best thing to tell women. And I'm not trying to tell women whatever it is that they need to believe. I'm not even talking about, a religious aspect or non-religious or atheistic or whatever. I'm just saying, if you go to Rome, you better think that there's going to be something Catholic in Rome. You know what I mean? If you go to Paris, you better believe that there's probably going to be something, pertaining to Catholicism in Paris. If you go to England, there's probably going to be something connected to Christianity. If you go to Spain, there's probably going to be stuff that's connected to religious aspects. And that's for like every country. Like every country that you go to, there's going to be some religious aspect of that country. And whether it's Christianity, whether it's Judaism, or whether it's Islam or Hinduism, there's going to be some religious aspect in that society. And so for women to say that everything is about culture and then say that they have no background or they have no sense of what it means to be of a certain religious denomination or of a religious slant or bias would be weird to me at this age, in this day and age. I couldn't possibly imagine that a woman does not know what Christianity is. I would just find that weird. I mean, whether it's because she never celebrated Easter, or she never celebrated Christmas, or because she never went to church, or because she doesn't believe in marriage, or she doesn't believe in a husband, or she doesn't believe in having children, whatever it is. I would find that hard to believe that that woman is an independent woman and should be taken serious on a professional level. I don't see how she can possibly imagine that to be true. It would be very difficult for me to take her serious. And so I think women in some of their own perspectives and their own rights, they've kind of they've pigeonholed themselves into these situations where they really can't say that they have done what they were supposed to be doing in the first place, to say that women were looking out for women, or other women were looking out for other women, or older women were looking out for the next generation of women. Chances are the women were looking out for themselves, and those women were broken down to different demographics. And those different demographics were what kind of separated these women, whether it was into their looks, their religion, their intelligence, their heights, their sizes, their sense of fashion, their music, the makeup they wear, the hairstyles they like. I mean, there's just way too much information for women to have to go through, to have to decide on, all on their own, what was an independent woman supposed to do. I think it's ludicrous to believe that an independent woman can call herself independent. I think in her own essence, she's probably dependent on something, whether that be another woman or another man, and whether that be through a mother or a father or through a superior officer or supervisor or boss, whatever the case, where that's just the honest reality of the situation. This is a shot of Venice. It's Venice, Italy. So yeah, I don't know. Listening to women and what they have to say about men and when they're questioning men, because I've watched some of these shows like Whatever, where Whatever's talking with like women that are on OnlyFans, or these websites where these women are on these sites where they're doing explicit modeling. I personally, I'm not against certain things. There's certain things that I understand that women are going to be faced with in this day and age. And these are things that have been going on for a long time. And so is it something that women are all going to experience the same thing throughout the course of their lifetime, each and every woman? No, of course not. Women are going to have different things that they're going to experience at their own levels. And so, like, listening to these guys kind of argue or go back and forth about what a woman should do with her life, her body, and all of this, I mean, it's dizzying, to say the least, that, you know, these women and these men can actually have conversations and go back and forth, and then make it sound like it's not like a do-si-do or some type of a merry-go-round conversation, where they're not really getting to the point, or they're not getting to wherever it is where they want to get off, or they want to, you know, move on to the next whatever it is that is more important. So I don't know. I guess this will be my just my women's talk, just for a little ditty of conversation. I'm at about 43 minutes here, and I went through some pictures, so I just wanted to put something out there for the women, because I'm always seeing that there's women that are kind of coming across videos, so I wanted to have something for women specific, and then I'll see if I can think of some more like content, because it really is hard. It's not easy to come up with stuff to talk about women's issues and to be so specific about whatever issues are going on right now, right this second. You know, where I listen to like Leela Rose, or I hear other women, Brent, I forget her last name, but I listen to these conservative talking point women. Melanie Mack is another one that I listen to, and they all have good points. They're all bringing their own understanding of what the issues are from a woman's perspective, and then talking about the issues about, you know, what people are experiencing on a religious level, and it all makes sense. It makes sense. But on a cultural side of things, I think on the men, you know, you have to incorporate men into that mulch, right? Because that mulch that goes around the flowers, that goes around the garden, without that mulch to keep the moisture so that you can retain the water in order to make the flowers grow, you're not going to see what people, want to see in that garden. They want to see something beautiful. They want to see something grow. They want to see flowers grow in that garden. But if there's not that mulch, that mix of men and women that can come together, that serve a purpose, that used to be a tree, that gets cut down, that gets chipped up, and now that becomes the mulch that gets used to preserve the flowers and make things beautiful. You need more of that. You need more where people understand how that process works, and how to go about doing that in order to make it possible so that the world does change for the better. Because I think that's what real men and real women want. They want something that's going to allow for real change, where it's going to change for the better for everybody. Not just one generation, not just, the future generation, but the present generation, the past generation, the current generation, the up and coming generation. They want to see something that's going to last. And the women have a big part in that, to have to, speak or, have to account for. But America is lacking. Because when I went to Europe in 2000, I saw a lot of things over in Europe that I was impressed by. And I saw a culture that was not like American culture. It was historical culture. And that's the one thing that the United States is lacking. It doesn't have that historical culture. It doesn't have the city formation, the buildings, the architecture, and they don't have it in the language either. They don't have it in the customs. They don't have it in their way of communication. A lot of it is consumerism. And so there's a lot of things where if they don't make changes, or if the younger generation or women in general don't start to change the talking points, or don't start to wake up to some of these realizations, that when it comes to saying, well, we want to know where's the real conversation, who's having the real conversation about the real issues? Well, you've got to go find real people. You got to find real people that have led real lives, that understand. If you want to see how things work, or if you want to understand how things, should be, if you want to have, a real good time, or real times that are real, real fun, like back in the 80s, back in the 90s, back in the early 2000s, before all the mess and all the hullabaloo that came out of, all the politics. If you're gonna try to mix culture and politics, you're gonna make a mess of things. My suggestion would be, keep the politics out of the culture. If there's been ever a lesson to learn through any of, what has gone on or what has happened over the past few years, is, keep the politics out of the culture. Let the culture be local. Keep the culture local. Keep the politics state. Keep it national. And then keep that culture outside of the purview of the politics. Because once you start putting that politics on that local culture, the county culture, the town culture, stuff like that, that's when you start messing around with things. So that's just my advice. That's my little suggestions. I don't know which picture to end with here. We'll end with the one that I started with. Notre Dame. Cathedral of Notre Dame. Hunchback of Notre Dame. That's where the hunchback used to hang out, up there, up in the tower. used to ring the bell, the fray. Ding, 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 ding. Alright, well, this has been about 50 minutes, so I'm hoping some women will watch it and listen to it, and that this will benefit somebody. Even if they listen to like 5 or 10 minutes, hopefully someone will appreciate it. Alright, thanks guys. Thanks for listening. Fellas, if you listen to it, that's good. Good on you guys. Ladies, if you listen to it, that's good on you guys too. God bless, and I don't know what to say. Viva la France. Peace out.